We are in session. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So student and staff recognitions are for America's Healthiest Schools. Dr. Adams, will you make that presentation?
I'll have to come back to it, Madam President. I don't have that in front of me at this point in time. I don't think Ms. Pierce sent it to me yet.
Okay, thank you. So we have no minutes for approval tonight, so we will go into the superintendent's report.
Good afternoon. Is it my time now? First of all, good evening. I want to thank our staff, students, and families for a successful start to an unusual school year. I also want to express appreciation for our community partners that donated supplies and their time to help prepare students to start the school year. Of note is Emerging Wisdom founder Rebecca Bennett and the Prepare STL organization, which coordinated the delivery of nearly 18,000 masks for elementary and middle school students. We appreciate their partnership very much. Please mark your calendars for the release of a special video honoring our 2019-20 Educators of the Year, including our district-wide Educator of the Year, Dr. Jana Flynn, a gifted enrichment teacher at Mason Elementary and Humboldt Academy. Unfortunately, we will not be able to hold the in-person event we have become accustomed to, but we hope this virtual celebration will be fun for our winners, their loved ones, and SLPL staff, students, and families. The video will be posted on our website on Wednesday, September the 23rd. The Educator of the Year program is sponsored by the Parson Blewett Memorial Fund and support from the St. Louis Public Schools Foundation and multiple individuals and corporate donors. A couple of other announcements before we get started. I'd like to, first of all, recognize the board president. Congratulations once again on achieving the Advanced Board Member Certification 2020. We regret that we were unable to honor your achievement in person during the Igniting Great Ideas Summit in June, or alternately at the MSBA conference in cooperation with MASA in September. We do not want any more time to pass and hope that you will celebrate your achievement during the upcoming board meeting. Obviously, that's tonight. Thank you for your leadership and best wishes for a successful new year. We hope to see you at the virtual MSBA conference on September 25th and 26th. This comes from Mrs. Phyllis Box. And so I'd like to recognize the board president with a plaque. From Mrs. Box, again, congratulations once again on achieving, and this is for Dr. Joyce Roberts. Congratulations once again for achieving the Advanced and Master Board Member certifications in 2020. We regret that we were unable to honor your achievements in person during the Igniting Great Ideas Summit in June at the MSBA conference in cooperation with MASA in September. We did not want any more time to pass and hope that you will celebrate your achievement during the upcoming board meeting. Thank you for your leadership and best wishes for a successful school year. We hope to see you at the virtual MSBA conference on September 25th and 26th. Dr. Joyce Roberts will receive 2 plaques tonight, one again for the Master Board Member Certification and one for the Advanced Master Board Member Certification. We have several presentations tonight. We'll start with the benefits presentation. I know we have guests that are coming in, our consultants who will be providing us with an update, Mr. Burton, Ms. Karen Shelton Henry, and our 2 consultants. The board should have that in their packet. You also will provide an electronic copy of it as well.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Adams, peers, and citizens who are concerned watching online. Today, we're just going to walk through the benefits proposal that I believe is on the agenda for you to vote on next month at your October agenda. So today, we'll just talk through the medical pharmacy coverage, the dental, the vision coverage, and then short-term and long-term disability, basic life, accidental death and dismemberment, and voluntary life coverage. Here with me, I should say, is our benefit specialist, Karen Shelton Henry, who will help me with the presentation, and also our benefits brokers, Mike Kilker and Rebecca Schmidt. There we go. So here we are on the first slide here. So medical pharmacy coverage, and this is coverage that would be effective January 1. What we're recommending is that we renew with all of our carriers. The medical coverage here, as you can see, there's with United Healthcare that will continue for our staff. We've negotiated what is a 5.5% increase, which we've also will be offset by a premium credit, which we've negotiated of $1.5 million, which would be applied in December. We would use that negotiated premium credit to basically allow the cost of our medical premiums to be flat for next year for staff. So basically the staff would receive the same coverage that they have now with the same, with the same coverage, with the same deductibles and everything at the same rate that they pay now. Because we've negotiated this credit. And so the national average increase is about 6 to 10%, and this would basically stay flat for us because of the application of the credit. Next up is prescription drugs. And so we use Express Scripts, as you know, through the benefits, the Business Health Coalition. And our experience this year is up for a number of reasons, and which would indicate probably a 22% increase. And we've managed to reduce that to a 0% by offsetting it with anticipated rebates and our health health trust reserves. Thus, the national trend is 8 to 10%. And again, our district and our staff will experience no increase next year. And then I'll let Ms. Henry share the rest of the information. And stick around for questions.
Our dental coverage will be provided through Delta Dental. This is the second year of a 2-year rate guarantee. The national trend is running between 3 and 5%, but again, we have no increase. Vision will continue to be with Vision Benefits of America. This is the second year of a 4-year rate guarantee, and that trend is running about 3%. All of our ancillaries, which are short-term and long-term disability, basic life, accidental death and dismemberment, and voluntary life will all stay at the same rate. This is the second year of a 3-year rate guarantee with Cigna. This slide is a little busy, but I think it paints a great picture. It shows what the total estimated annual premium is and what those percentage changes would be. It shows what the employee responsibility is, which is 0, and then the district responsibility. As you go down the district responsibility column, there's a 6.2% combined premium increase with medical and pharmacy. When we apply the $1.5 million premium credit, and with all the other ancillaries staying at 0, the net is a negative 0.7% decrease to the overall premium for the district. The next slide shows the district's 10-year, or actually 11-year rate and what the percentage of change is year over year going back to 2010. So you can see that we've had some highs and some lows, but the last 4 years we've had a negative and then percentage increases under 6%, which is really under the national trend. This just shows what the premium increases are, which they are 0, and what those costs will be to the district prior to the $1.5 million credit and the offset of the pharmacy rebates as well as the trust fund allowance for pharmacy. Questions?
Does the board have any questions for either our staff or the consultants?
Yeah, I have a quick question. The credit you received, is that because of the ACA credits required if you don't meet a certain percentage of costs due to medical?
No, we know that this year, because of the pandemic, a lot of inpatient services were put on hold. We don't know what's going to happen in 2021. And it was kind of a negotiated product that was available in this year to be applied to next year.
So it was not because of the ACA credits
No.
required? Okay.
No.
Okay. Also, do you guys look at any other type of benefits like high deductible for that could be younger staff members could take advantage of?
We have looked at that in previous years. We are going to be going out to bid in 2021, and that is going to be something that we're going to look at again.
Okay, very good.
If there are no other questions, thank you very much. Again, board, you will receive this for a vote at the October board meeting. If you have any further questions after this meeting, please direct them to myself and I'll have staff respond. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second item on the agenda is a September monthly update. It was not on the original agenda. We added it on yesterday. It was an oversight on my part. The board is asking for a monthly financial update every single month. And so this is the monthly update for August, and so the September monthly financial update. Mrs. Banks.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is the monthly financial and year-to-date report for August 2020. Okay, this is our standard agenda that we'll have for all of our monthly financial updates. The third bullet really indicating the month that we'll be reviewing. So August year-to-date. Our financial objectives have not changed. We do have some COVID updates. There are several grants. These are all reimbursement grants, meaning that we will actually spend the money and then request the funding, which is a little bit different than the CARES ESSER funds that we received all that money in advance. So there's a 284 access grant to extend school network access, and that was based on an allocation of $4,000 per school building. A $977,000 connectivity grant for student electronic devices, $468 for transportation grant, which our transportation department will be determining which expenditures may be allowable under that grant. And the Coronavirus Relief Fund Supply Reimbursement Grant, which requires a 25% grant and requires a 75% match from St. Louis City. And this is really for PPE and for medical supplies for schools and buses. So the Office of Institutional Advancement, they will be coordinating with the City of St. Louis to really identify those matching funds. This is what we all know about before. Nothing on here has changed other than the fact that the coronavirus relief funds that we just discussed with the 75% city match. Here is our CARES spending year-to-date update, approximately $1 million of spending on PPE, sanitation, and extra service expenditures in the categories that you see here. And we'll have a running total at each financial update to add to these expenditures. This again is last year, fiscal year 20, an update of our revenues and expenditures. Last month, you may recall that we had under the federal category, we have the fund categories across the top. Our federal funds showed about a $20 million change in the fund balance, and that's because we have not received all of our federal reimbursement grants. Now we have actually made some adjustments to in our system to identify which of those grants we anticipate receiving. So you see that now it just shows about, a $16,000 fund balance deficit for the year under federal. So this looks much closer to what we expect for the final once we are audited, although there will be several small adjustments over the next couple of months. This is just the graphical depiction of our fiscal year 20 revenues and expenditures to date. We have the expenditures on the pie chart at the top, and the bottom line chart shows our revenues and expenditures by month. Again, here's our fiscal year 21 adopted budget. We have our revenues by fund across the top and by source on the left column going down, and then our expenditures by fund across the top and by object going down. So highlights for August. All of our staff have returned in August. So the last to return would have been our 10-month school-based staff and mostly our teachers, and they returned on August 17th. We have created about 300 new instructional support center staff, although I think only about 200 of those positions were actually filled. Of course, some of our major expenditures have been delayed due to the remote or virtual environment that we're in. So we're not seeing some of the typical transportation expenditures or food service expenditures. Those look a little bit different right now. But of course, as you would expect, our software licensing, we have seen some increases due to the virtual environment, whether that be to the Edmentum or some of the academic curricula. So here are our fiscal year 21 July actuals and our August preliminaries. Again, we have the current month preliminaries because it takes about 30 days to complete the prior month. So you can see in red that we have about $3.4 million in August revenues. I'm sorry if I said expenditures. $3.4 million in August revenue and a year-to-date revenue total of $6.2 million, or about 1.6% of the revenue budget. The bar graph at the bottom shows the budget in green by source, and there are blue bars that show the actuals year-to-date. So again, as we progress through the year, those blue bars will continue to rise. Here we have our expenditures. Our July expenditures are final. Our August expenditures are preliminary. We can see for August, we have about $8.2 million in expenditures, and as you would expect, salaries and benefits are the highest numbers. Our total or year-to-date expenditures are about $12.2 million, or 3% of the expenditure budget. Similarly, the bottom bar graph in blue, you'll see the budget by object, and then the orange bars are going to be the year-to-date totals. So our financial objectives have not really changed much. However, I guess what has happened is we received the assessed valuations from the city on Friday afternoon. So that's something that we'll be working on to complete the tax rate requirements in preparation for the next board meeting. I'll answer any questions you might have.
I just have a couple, and most of it is mostly probably for my understanding, okay?
Sure.
On the preliminary unaudited results, I think you mentioned that we should see where you're going to be almost balanced, and I'm not sure if I see that.
For fiscal year 20 for last year?
2019-20, yeah, I see deficit of 8 million for total. And is that going to how the year's going to end, or?
Well, when you consider that in our debt service fund, we do have a deficit.
Okay.
In our trust fund, we have a deficit because we have a fund balance. So the deficit, that $8 million, is just for the year.
Okay.
That's just the annual deficit. But you'll notice on the bottom row, you'll see fund balances.
Right. Okay, that's what you were mentioning about the fund balances then.
Yeah, I guess our.
So you can roll a deficit forward to reduce the fund balance, but still have a positive fund balance.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. Then the other thing, the PPE money, will all that be converted to grants, or will any be converted to loans?
No loans.
No loans.
No
Okay,
loans.
Very good. And then, do you guys budget by month? Because I was thinking it might be nice to see budget versus actual by month versus just a percent of budget.
We don't really budget by month.
That's fine.
We've tried that in the past, but
I know with
currently we're
government
not.
entities, it gets kind of hard, but I just wanted to check. So this is fine. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Banks. For just one question. On slide 6 with the PPE equipment, I know that's like the initial purchase, but do you have an idea of what time period that's covering or projected to cover? So is this like a 3-month supply we're looking at, or is it a 1-month supply?
Of the actual purchases,
Right. So like with PPE equipment, that 105,000, I'm going to assume that that's just not for September. That's probably like stockpiling resources until some point. Just an idea of, because I know you said there's going to be a rolling amount that we'll get, and just knowing that that's going to look different next month, just thinking about what this is anticipated to cover.
correct. Well, it really depends on which particular item. So for example, with masks, we probably have a supply of masks that we anticipate will take us through the end of the calendar year. It really just depends on what the particular item is, and I can certainly go back and get more detail.
Okay, I think that's okay. And then I think one thing that would be helpful for me in looking at next month is just of this total for care spending, just the year to date, just what percentage we are at. Because I know you said in a previous presentation that we spend to a certain amount and then the rest of the dollars get released, correct?
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
We'll spend the CARES dollars to a certain amount, and after we hit a certain amount, then the rest of the CARES dollars get released?
No, for the CARES dollars, we actually received our entitled
We get the entire
allocation
thing.
upfront. So approximately $10.7 million. So we actually have in our bank account.
Okay. So then would it, so then just for the future reports, could we just see at what percentage, what utilization percentage we're at?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts, I think you have a question.
Yes, sir. I'd like to start on page 3. Have the requirements for full accreditation changed?
Have the requirements for full accreditation changed? We have not received any update at this point in time, so we're assuming that they have not changed.
Okay. On to page 4. Bullet number 2, the Gears Connection Grant. Of that $977 plus $300,000 is remitted to the non-public?
No, actually, the amounts in red are the allocations for St. Louis Public Schools, and any other amounts in black, those are the allocations for the non-public schools. So they're separate allocations.
Thank you. On to page 5 are the red numbers, minus 4.1, and then we have a negative 5.5. Are those dollars that we are not receiving or are restricted by the state? That's like $9.6 million.
Yes, those were both based on state restrictions. The 4.1 was actually for fiscal year 21, so that impacts this year, whereas the $5.5 million was a restriction in June that impacted last fiscal year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Banks. Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Ms. Banks.
Thank you.
Additionally, at this time of the year, we try to provide the board an update around the back-to-school report. Obviously, this will be an altered presentation because while we're back in school, we're in virtual. And so the data that you're looking at compared to previous years is going to be dramatically different for that reason. And some new updated information relative to the virtual environment will also be shared with you. Uh, I want to provide you with an HR staffing update, some information on the General Call Center, virtual school update, technology deployment, and instructional support centers. First and foremost, staffing update. At this point in time, the number of teachers hired have been 155. You can see what the numbers were in previous years. The number to your right is from July 1 to present. The previous numbers indicate the entire year. If you want to do a comparison from that for the same around the same period of time, and you have an ink pen, you can put this information in, and I can also provide you an electronic copy. But for the same time last year, the number that you will be looking at will be 200. So for July 1 to present, we've hired 155 teachers. So far this year, last year, this time, it was about 200 teachers. In terms of TFA teachers, we've hired 11 at this point in time. That's still offers that are outstanding. This time last year, that number would have been 22. In terms of separations, 24 separations from July 1st to present. If you were looking at the same number last year, that number would have been 51 teachers who had or resigned. 11 would be the number right now. If you were looking at the same number of teachers who retired last year, same period of time, that number would be 7. And the number of other teachers who are separated by death, that number was a 0 and was 1 last year. Total separations for this year from July 1 to present will be 35. For total separations last year using July 1 data would be 58. So I'm just trying to show you some comparison while we're giving the entire year numbers here, because I know you might ask questions about the same comparative data. In terms of vacancies, teaching vacancies, at this point in time, we have 105. Last year, same time last year, that number would have been 51. Non-teaching staff vacancies this year from September 1st to the end, from July 1 to September 1st, that number will be 69. Last year, same time period, about 42. Assistant principal vacancies, 0. At this point in time, same period of time last year would have been 1. And so the total number of vacancies existing this year is 174 compared to about 94 for the same period of time last year. Hard to fill positions, won't go through all of it with you, but indicating these are the positions that were hard to fill. In special education, that number is 15 this year. That number would have been 4 last year. In terms of regular teachers, that number is 12. That number would have been 8 last year. Physical education, 13 this year. That number last year would have been 3. In terms of employee relations, ADA last year, the number this year is 105. Obviously, a number of persons have made requests for ADA. Last year, that number was 33. Number of background certifications, 4. Complaints, you can see 0. DFS cases, you can see what the numbers are. Fit for duty, job abandonments. Last year, that number would have been 25 compared to 14. Policy violations, that number is 12. Last year, that number would have been 19 for the same period of time. Leave of absences, employees on approved family medical leave, that number is 16. As of September the 1st, that number last year would have been 19. 9 employees on medical leave for family, that number last year would have been 0. Employees on approved COVID-related, and this is based on COVID, last year that number would have been 63. That number would have been 113, but that would have been a rollover from the previous year. Child care, 31. Last year that number would have been 0. And employees on approved non-FMLA leave, intermittent leave, that number It's 28. Last year, that number would have been 0. Completed leave requests, 131. Last year, that number was 36. You can see in the area of leaves, those numbers are higher based upon the COVID-19 situation. Labor agreement, labor management grievances, 0, 1, 0, 3, and 3. General call center, we normally open a general call center up 10 to 12 days before school year. This year, we've opened it 21 days earlier. You can see the comparison in terms of phone calls received by the general call center to try to address any kind of calls that are coming in. The number is about 1,500. Last year, for a 10-day period of time, it was about 5,000. Virtual school attendance enrollment, and I use the word attendance enrollment because in some cases, persons were counting attendance, not understanding the enrollment piece. So I want to be careful around that particular number. First day, you can see elementary, middle, high school, and alternative, 12,000 total. Second day, 14,000. Third day, 15,000. Fourth day, 16,100, and a decline in 16,162. Obviously, as I indicated before, many of our staff were counting enrollment, attendance as enrollment. The enrollment could not have dropped, and so that's why I'm indicating this is enrollment/attendance. Based on today's data, that number is about 18,000. This was for the first 4 days. So using the data for today, I got it off from Mrs. Van Oy prior to the meeting, it was about 18,000. And we're cleaning up that data as we speak. There was some error in terms of how our attendance persons were collecting the data as it relates to attendance versus enrollment because of the virtual environment. In terms of equipment, iPads, at the time of August the 7th, there were about 4,500 iPads out, about 1,952 hotspots still out from the spring semester as well as the summer. If you look at the data from Friday, there are about 1,200 iPads still outstanding and about 690 hotspots that are still outstanding. Number of damaged hotspots is iPads about 11% of the total number, and the hotspots damaged about 31%. If you look at the top of your table, you have a picture of it looks like a phone. It should be at the front of your table. That is what the hotspots look like in the past. If you turn to 2 pages, you can see what the new hotspots will look like. Part of the challenge for us in terms of the hotspots that you look at initially is that it looks like it's a phone screen, and that phone screen cracks and breaks. And so we've gone to a smaller hotspot. As a matter of fact, these hotspots were limited in terms of data. The new hotspots will not be limited in terms of data. It will be unlimited. So that was one of the issues in terms of the 33% hotspots that were damaged. It wasn't necessarily any fault of anybody, it's just that the screen was glass, and if it would fall and break, it would obviously cause damage. We're trying to get those repaired as well, but the new hotspots that we're expecting to get over the next 3 or 4 days are much smaller and don't have a screen that breaks. So if you're asking me how many students still have outstanding data, items out, that would be around the 1,200 number because the hotspots and the iPads would go together. In terms of distribution, we have distributed 11,708 as of Friday. iPads, about 3,000 laptops, hotspots, about 2,000. We are short at this point in time of hotspots for a couple of reasons. Number one, as I indicated, that we had a 33% breakage. And so even though some hotspots were returned, there are about 600 hotspots that are still outstanding. We've ordered an additional 1,000, like as I said, that we should be getting in the next 3 or 4 days. In addition to that, those persons who had internet access in March, many don't have internet access now. So while we ordered 4,000 and we had more than enough in the spring, we find that there's a greater need now, and because of the damaged hotspots coming back, that we need more hotspots. And so hence the notion of purchasing additional hotspots. You can see that we have distributed about 3,600 and 3,600 iPads that have not been distributed, and also about 1,600 laptops that had not been distributed as of Friday. Families were still coming and picking them up from schools. So what we've given out to schools, when we say distributed, that's to schools, not distributed, because in the past, we did the distribution ourselves from central office. Schools are doing the distribution now from their schools. You can see also on this chart that 35 families have opted out of the of technology, and saying that we will work out some other agreement arrangement. We don't want any technology. In terms of the instructional support centers, we started the instructional support centers on the 31st. The anticipated number of students that we expected was around 2,100. On the first day, we had about 947 students. Second day, 990. Third day, about 1,062. Fourth day, about 1,064. And on the fifth day, which was Friday, 1,040. I don't have any data at this point in time in terms of what the numbers look like for today. But we have about 50% of the families who initially said they wanted to go to an instructional support center still using an instructional support center. The high school instructional support centers, we had 3. We closed 2 down and moved those students to another site because the numbers were so low. So at this point in time, instead of having 24 sites, we have 22 sites as of this morning. Food service meal rates. You can see what the numbers were in the past, but because of the small number of kids that we are servicing right now, only about 22% of what we're serving for breakfast, about 24% for lunch. The number of meals that we did this time last year would have been what you see at the bottom. We've only done about 8,752 meals at this point in time. Participation rates are down by 53%. Total meals are down by 92%. The breakfast meals, the COVID meals that we gave over the summer, this was from March throughout the entire summer, was about 327,000, 326,000 lunch meals, and that's should be an M instead of N, 327,000, that's an error, it's there. And adult meals about 28,000, and we have to pay $1 for the adult meals. The foundation supported that effort by paying for those meals for adults. There is a grant that Mallinckrodt has received for a Gen Youth grant that they are receiving at this point in time. Transportation in terms of buses, 129 regular buses started on the 31st, 29 sped buses, a total of about 158 buses. And again, the eligible number of students were around 2,147, and that would have been the students who said that they were going to the ISC. Call center data for transportation, you can see what the numbers were in the past and what the numbers are now. Also, transportation on-time performance, a smaller number of students that the transportation company is servicing. You can see on the first day what the rate was in terms of on-time performances in the high 90s compared to, in some cases, 70 on the first day of last year. Smaller number of students to pick up, smaller number of buses to run. Questions that the board has at this point in time? Ms. Val.
I was wondering if you could reiterate, since our meeting last time, how many pieces of technology were retrieved from pawn shops? I know that there was a rumor out there, and I just was hoping that we could clarify some of that.
So there was an article that was done by Tony Messenger that was in the St. Louis Post on Monday that clarified in great deal that misinformation, 0. We've collected 0 laptops or iPads from any pawn shop, 0.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I just wanted it to be out there for the public.
Thank you very much. Any other questions that the board may have?
Yes, I do. So in regard to the teaching vacancies, are these positions, I guess my first question is, do the vacancies include people who are on leave of absence? Like, is that a total number of all spots that need to be filled, or are those who are on leave of absence need to be added to the number of vacancies?
That does not count as a vacancy.
It does not.
It does
So
not.
that was like another 30 or 50
That is correct, depending upon the leave. Some people have intermittent leaves, meaning that they're out for 2 days. Some persons are out for 3 weeks, coming back, so that does not count as a vacancy. It does not.
So what percent of the vacancies need to be filled for this year? And I'm asking here about like, what is the interplay between the decline in student enrollment or attendance with the number of vacancies?
So I met with my team today and also met with Human Resources this morning. At this point in time, we have a slow hold on filling vacancies at this point in time because we may need to move persons from places that are overstaffed to other places. This is traditionally what we do. At the end of September, we will likely put that in place on September the 11th, with us, well, September the 11th, I'm sorry, September the 14th, with us making the final adjustments on the 21st. So at this point in time, if there are critical positions like math and science and special education, those we will continue to fill because we know that that will exist. But in other cases, i.e. PE, art, maybe some general classes, we will likely make some adjustments. Our pre-K numbers are down about 700. Some of those pre-K teachers may be able to teach other elementary classes. And so to answer your question, over the next 2 weeks, we will be determining how aggressively we go to turn to moving staff or to filling these vacancies. But at this point in time, we're still working specifically for those high needs positions that we think will still exist no matter what happens.
That makes sense. For the enrollment today was about 2,000 higher than it had been on Friday. Do you expect that trend to continue?
I do. The schools have been tasked. As of last night, I sent emails out to my network superintendents who work aggressively over the next 2 days. On Thursday at 5 o'clock, I'll know exactly what the numbers are because I'll just give an example. XYZ school had 43 kids that they could not identify or had not shown up. They're aggressively going after those kids to determine where they are. Social workers, social workers, counselors, as well as family community specialists who are in buildings every single day are tasked over the next 3 days to rectify that number to tell me exactly where every single kid is. Some kids are at home and never logged on. There are other issues that are going on and we just want to try to surface those numbers, but I do think the numbers are going to go up.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Adams, which two ICAs were closed and where were those students moved
Carnahan
to?
is closed as of Friday, as well as Vashon. Vashon had 9 students. Carnahan had a high of 14, a low of 9. And so those students are now going to Sodan. So Sodan is the only high school site that we're transporting kids to. And that number was around 25 or 30. We hesitated, Mr. Lang, to do high schools because high school students can basically take care of themselves and are likely not going to continue coming every day, all day. And so that played out exactly what we thought. And so right now, Sodan is the only site with about 30 to anywhere from 20 to 30 kids.
And they're being bused to Soldan?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Then the second question, we talked about the positions that are hard to fill. Are there harder to fill schools as well? So looking at, I know we looked at vacancies by position. Are we looking at vacancies by schools? Are there schools that are hit harder by our vacancies right now?
There's one school that has a double-digit number of vacancies, and that's a high school, and those are specialty areas. Other than that, Mr. Lang, the numbers are anywhere from 1 to 3, 1 to 4. And they're overall numbers, meaning that there are non-certs as well as certs. So only one high school I can think about right now that has an quote-unquote extraordinary number. Everything else is 1 or 2, 3.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because I know since we are virtual, just knowing it's a different level of crazy, especially in this first week of school and trying to make sure that a group of students are accounted for virtually versus if they're already in the building, we need to get a building sub or an administrator or someone to sit there. Just wondering if those schools or that school is facing any added adversity.
At this point in time, they're using additional staff, meaning building subs, and we're still providing them building subs and those kinds of things. I think the notion of equalizing the numbers will quickly put people in place because it's all virtual, as you indicated, such that that teacher can provide support. In addition to that, because it is virtual, in some cases, teachers may have more numbers than they normally would have. So they might have 20, they might have 28 right now to accommodate supporting those students. Most high schools especially are on for 3 hours a day, and then there's a lot of independent work from that point in time. So schools have made the adjustment, Mr. Lang, and by the end of this week, I'll know exactly what the numbers, I'll have a better idea what the numbers are, and we can kind of quickly make those adjustments.
So with that, do we have, I know we try to cap, I mean, physically, we can only have so many students in the classroom. We do try to cap that. Are we capping virtual classrooms as well?
Yes, sir, we are. Yes, sir.
Do we know what those numbers, what the
It will be
caps
the,
are?
it will be the same PTR. I want to say early childhood 20-1, depending on the class size. I want to say 22-1 K through 3. Fourth, fifth, sixth, I want to say 24, 25, and then 27 at the high school level. I can get you the exact state numbers that we use,
That works for me.
but that's in that ballpark.
That's fine for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I had a question regarding the hotspots. I know that it says we ordered them 8/31/2020. So I just would like to know if we have information on how we're going to get the new hotspots out. And for the people that gave damaged hotspots back to the district, will they be on the list first to receive those?
So we have what is called TICs in every single school that gives us, that give us the data relative to who needs what equipment. They are the ones that give information to Ms. Van Oy. We did a survey in the spring, and so we're using that data to determine. And so if somebody who did not have a hotspot in the spring is now indicating they need a hotspot, they will get a hotspot. But we try to go with the families who initially indicated in the spring that they needed a hotspot and don't have them right now. In terms of the hotspots that are broken, yes, we try to get them back to the persons who have broken equipment first to try to make sure that they can go on because they had a previous piece of equipment before. What we're working with an outside vendor right now to try to quickly fix the screens so that we could get those back into rotation.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Adams. I just had one question about our food service.
Yes, ma'am.
So I did actually go have a chance to pick up a box, for my student. However, when I picked up the box, I didn't notice there was a vegan option or any alternative as relates to like if somebody wanted like almond milk for the kid instead of dairy milk. Are we offering those options right now to families?
Yes, we are. If we
Okay.
are aware of those options and they tell us what those options are, we will make an adjustment to cover that, yes.
Okay.
We
Thank
just
you.
need to know.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Adams.
You're welcome.
Yes, Dr. Adams, my question is, I think at the last meeting, I asked about the saliva test,
Yes, ma'am.
and now there's a conversation about it. And I wanted to know, are we considering talking with parents and students and staff about having the saliva test done for their child that's currently a student?
So tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I'll be on the phone with the health director of the city, asking him the same question. Will that saliva test be available? When will it be available? It is not available to us at this point in time. But I will be having a conversation with Dr. Echols tomorrow to ask him what is the possibility of those tests being available, period, for possible use by schools. At this point in time, Ms. Jones, they're not available to the general public that I am aware of.
All right, and my last question is, in terms of the dates, many of the students that are on campus currently or the universities are saying to me that after Thanksgiving, they're not going to be coming back to their campus. So are we following a similar schedule, or will it be just like it would be in a normal school year?
Mrs. Jones, it was an idea that I floated early on, the possibility of starting school early. That was one of my ideas, to start the first week in August. Obviously, the state said no to that recommendation early on, and it was going to be my intent to end school at Thanksgiving. That did not occur. So all schools that I know of at this point in time that are K-12 schools are looking to have a similar calendar as they had in the past, starting on August the 25th or August the 31st and going throughout the Thanksgiving break up until Christmas. So the answer is no. That is not something that K-12 schools are looking at. Colleges are looking at that as an option for themselves.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I will add, Ms. Jones, that a lot of colleges have backtracked on that now, and they said they're not letting students leave for Thanksgiving, but they are going to go till December.
Yes, ma'am.
I had one last question. I appreciate the topic breakdown on the transportation call center. I was wondering if we had anything similar for the general call center, like what is the general feeling of our families surrounding the virtual stuff? Are there any unmet needs that we need to consider?
Yes, I do have that broken down as well. I did not provide it. Most of the questions that came, and I can give you a report on that as well, Mr. Brown provided to me, were technology questions. Most of them were technology questions, much more than anything else, but I can provide you a breakdown in terms of what the analysis was of the call center information as well. You're welcome.
Dr. Adams, would you speak to liquidated damages briefly for me? I think
So I can defer to Mr. Senoma for that question. But basically, any employee who signs a contract with the district and then breaks that contract, per that contract, there are damages that they have to pay the district for breaking the contract. And it's, I don't know what, I can't remember what the amount is.
I don't have the amount. It's an amount designed to approximate what it costs the district in fees to replace or to recruit a replacement employee.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On to page 9. I appreciate a copy, the categories of calls. I think Natalie spoke to that.
I'm sorry.
Can we
I
get a
didn't-
copy of the category of calls received by the general call center?
I can provide that to you tomorrow.
And on page 10, the attendance and enrollment piece. When the child logs on for the first time, is that considered the enrollment portion?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
And any time after that is considered attendance?
That is correct, 100% correct. Yes, ma'am.
And so do we have an idea around the percentage of attendance during this first couple?
The numbers I'm giving you right here, those are the numbers. That's why I said it's the nuances around enrollment attendance. Some of our secretaries were counting the first time, some were not counting the first time. And so that's why we're cleaning this up over the next 3 or 4 days. We're still early in this process.
Okay, so the numbers that I'm looking at are hours, or what are they?
Actual students. The numbers you're looking at are
Actual
students. 6,674 students actually logged on the first day at the elementary level.
Okay.
This does not count students who do not have technology or students who had outstanding technology issues and got packets. That's why we're cleaning this data up. This is just log on information at this point in time.
Okay. On to page 12, where we have 35 families who have opted out of technology. Are they being provided packets?
I don't know the specifics of all of these families.
Okay.
In most cases, they have technology already or they are getting packets. That is correct. But I can give you some more information regarding that on tomorrow as well. It was all technology. In other words, they had their own technology and did not want to sign for
They had
technology.
their own technology.
Yes.
Okay. On page 13, on the 5th day, the number is 1,040. And the transportation page says that there are 2,147 students identified for transportation.
Yes,
So
ma'am. I'm sorry.
Are we operating buses with no students on them?
We do have some buses. The first week of school that happens anyway, kids don't show up at bus stops. We clean it up after 5 to 7 days. So 2,147 students said, yes, I'm coming to ISC. Some did not show up. So after the first week, we clean the data up, and that number is going to be much, much smaller in terms of how many are actually engaged in the ISC. So yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions that the board has?
Dr. Adams,
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't see anything, and I'm not sure if it should be included or not, about in our school opening report about teachers. Do you have any updates around anything around like the teachers or anything they might be experiencing? Any great things, any kind of setbacks we've had, or?
Well, I can give you some anecdotal information. Obviously, this is a new environment for many of our teachers as we start this process of the virtual school. We've gotten a lot of concerns relative to the ability to use Teams and the kind of dashboards that we're using. Ms. Vanoy met with Microsoft Teams today to try to work out some issues that persons were having in terms of kids getting on and chatting and doing other kinds of things. So we are getting feedback, a lot of feedback. Met with Mr. Cummings on yesterday from Local 420. He gave me a one-pager of outstanding concerns. The network superintendents did the same thing, and Ms. Vanoy is addressing those concerns. But overall, Mrs. Jones, things are going relatively well. But still, there's some real challenges in terms of families engaging in virtual. I think it is incumbent on myself and this board and us, quite frankly, look at how fast can we get kids back in school. It is a real challenge to be in a virtual setting, irrespective of if we do everything perfect and teachers do a great job. It is a very difficult situation for families to be in. And so we are going to be working aggressively to try to do our best at the October time to see what kind of steps we need to take to make sure that we're supporting staff, number one, and students and families as we try to get kids back in school. And you'll hear me talking more about it at the work session, even prior to the work session. But scale of 1 to 10, I think it's going relatively well with an 8, but there are still some challenges. I talked about the challenges of some kids not being online, some kids being online, and the internet going out on our first day of school. Our phone systems went out across the city. And so we've had some glitches, but families are struggling in this environment, especially at the earlier grades. It seems that the older grades are doing better, but at the earlier grades, there seems to be more challenges. We started pre-K today, and I have not gotten an update from Dr. Knight on how that's going, but there are some challenges that no matter what we do, they're going to have those challenges because kids have to have an adult, especially younger kids, to get on and do those kinds of things. So I think it's incumbent on us as a staff and on the board to understand that we are going to work really hard to make a recommendation to the board to try to get back in school as soon as possible. Obviously listening to all the audiences that are out there and ideas and views, but we are going to work hard to try in October to move forward in terms of getting kids back in-person instruction.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Adams.
There are several other documents that you have in front of you. I won't spend a lot of time on those documents. I know the night has been long, and it wasn't my intent to go over them, but just to introduce them to you. Madam President asked for some information relative to the assessment calendar. You have 3 sheets of blue paper. One says elementary, one says middle, one says high. And basically, these are the assessments that are covered in elementary, the assessments that are covered in middle school, and the assessments that are covered in high school. Those items that are in dark, bold, or those are required by the state. All other items are ones that we put in place, STAR, Scantron, and the like. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these documents right now, other than to introduce them to you. I think Dr. Roberts also asked for a copy of them as part of a document that I provided to her. But I would love at the work session, Madam President, to spend a little bit more time in delving these. I know that the night is long and there are 2 or 3 other things that still need to be covered. But so I'm simply introducing them to you now with the idea that I'll send you an electronic copy and then you can give me feedback or questions that you might have. The next item that I want to, that the board asked, or that I would like to cover with the board is, you have a document that says summary of key indicators. I talked about the notion of going back to school, but on a regular basis, we look at data that's coming from professionals from Educational Plus as well as medical professionals. And I'd like to spend a couple of minutes here just to, again, give you an idea of what we look at on a regular basis. This is a summary of key indicators, and it says, starting in April, the St. Louis Regional Superintendents began meeting weekly to learn best practices, discuss issues, and collaborate around the process of bringing students back to school. A direct outcome from these superintendents' meetings was to create a working group that would collaborate with health professionals, which we've been doing on a regular basis, to develop guidelines for school districts to implement in order to bring students back to school for face-to-face instruction. And a return to school guidance document was put in place around July the 7th. That guidance document has the following information on there. 3 big pieces here. One is new cases, and you can see in St. Louis City, that number is about 11.75. That's rate per 100,000 over a 7-day period of time. The other number that's an important number is the transmission rate, and that's a rate that is about hospitalization rate and the total number of COVID diagnoses. If it's under 1, that's normally good. If it's over 1, that means the cases might be increasing. And the last number, and again, I'm running through this really quickly, not to do anything more to make you aware that we are looking at data as we make decisions. The next one is the positivity rate, meaning the percent of people who test positive for the virus of those overall who have been tested. So the 3 pages, if you look at any pages at all, it will be page 2, page 4, and while you see at the bottom of page 4, St. Louis City numbers cut off, the number on Friday was 7.1, 7.1 the day before, 7.2, 7.2, 7.1, and 6.7. That's the number of persons who test positive for the virus and overall who have been tested. That's what that positivity rate is. Bottom line is, I just need you to understand that we are looking at data. This is some of the data that we look at as we make decisions. Really complicated to get into all of the weeds of it. I can do that on a one-on-one basis or a smaller meeting with the board to kind of do that if you want to. But I want you to be aware that we are looking and plotting numbers every single day, talking to health professionals as we make decisions around what's best for kids. And we're not going to make any decisions that you would see recommendations that you would see numbers in red. Those numbers would have to be in orange or green or yellow for us to talk about what we might do. Again, I'm not spending a lot of time here because I know the day is long, and I just wanted to give you an update of it. I get this every single day, an analysis of this every single day, which I can provide to the board if they want to see it, and take out some of the pages that might not be germane to us. But we look at St. Louis County, look at St. Charles County. We also have it by zip code, so we know across by zip code where cases are by zip code. So we're looking at all of that data on a regular basis. The last 2 items, which are not on the agenda, but items that were requested from the board. The first item is an item that says Social Emotional Learning SES Toolbox. Board Member Jones asked for this information. It is in an electronic form. You will see that most of the items that are part of the social emotional learning toolbox are virtual. Why? Because our kids are 100% virtual at this time. There are some activities that are one-page activities, but most of these are activities that are geared toward using virtual YouTubes and other kinds of things to support kids in the social emotional environment. It tells you what the targeted audience is, what the activity is, what the format is, what's the source, what's the link, what materials might be needed in the notes. So all teachers receive one of these, and teachers are using this as they engage with kids virtually. Mrs. Jones asked for a copy of it, and this is a 20-page document that can be used by teachers, is being used by teachers to engage kids as they're in their virtual environment. The second item I do need some guidance from the board on. Mr. Lang requested some information, and you have it at the top of on your table. It should be on your left-hand side. It is all of the MOUs from to July 2019 to June 2020. There's a similar piece for contracts as well, but it covers all of them. And so what I need some guidance from the board on, and I'll take a minute to do this. If you look at the one that says vendor performance report for contractor renewal, and you turn to page 6 in the document that is the 8.5 by 14, 8.5 by 14. And you look at page 6 in yellow at the top. You see the vendor here is dynamic vending. That's the same vendor performance report that we would normally give to you. That information is listed here. Everything is listed here with the exception of, and what I need guidance from the board on, is what other information do you want from the annual vendor performance report to include here? What you have is the date the item was approved by the board, the department that's handling it, the vendor, the transaction date, the start date, the end date, the cost, and also a description of the services. What is not included here, and I intentionally left it out, is what from this vendor performance report do you want included in that last block? Is what I would need to find out from you, because there's a lot of information from the performance report, like the demographics, how many schools were included. Also, there's some data that talks about if the goal was met, also some supported data when relevant. So the bottom line is some guidance is needed for me to complete this project, Mr. Lang, that's relative to what from the vendor performance report needs to be included for the data part. Once that information is completed or provided to me, then we can give you an analysis of every single contract, every single MOU. And it doesn't have to be tonight, but I just want to kind of give this to the boards to let you know that we have been working on it. But we stopped when I did not, I could have put what I subjectively thought would need to be there, but I like the board to have some, to give some guidance, because you'll be using this electronic or otherwise to let us know one-stop place to look at everything that has been done over the course of the year.
So I know for me, and like I said, I know you don't, or like you said, you don't need the information tonight. I would just look through, since there are different vendors, it wouldn't make sense to have different KPIs for
Right.
each vendor, but just looking through, I'll probably look through like what type of department it falls into and see if there are KPIs for that department. And that would be the suggestions that I would levy up to.
So basically pull out what's already in the vendor performance report that's KPI related and included in the data section.
No. So looking at what categories the vendors fall into for the contracts and for MOUs,
Yeah.
and then looking at based on what type of service they provide, what might be an indicator. So like you said, it might be the number of schools that they serve, because we might want to see based on if there are two indicators, number of schools served and some sort of performance indicator for the outcomes, seeing if that's something that we want to not only just renew, but also increase the breadth of that.
Gotcha.
That helps us for that decision. So that's what I'd be looking at, the categories. And like, again, if academics is a category, what might be the KPIs for academics that we might want to see in a contract, and then having a category to put that out there.
So we'll work on a couple of samples, send it to the board to look at and give me some feedback about it. It will be the same thing. I also provided you one for MOUs, and the one for MOU is on page, same exact thing. It's just that it wasn't a vendor report, it's an MOU analysis on page 8. If you look at page 8 of the MOU one, and we pulled out one from Midwest Dairy Council, again, telling me exactly what you want as an annual MOU performance report information would be helpful to us to know how to populate that moving forward. So any kind of guidance, and these are for you to have, board, any kind of guidance that you can send me electronically, it would be my hope at the work session I could give you something to look at, such that you could have one document to go to either electronically or hard copy to look to see when an item comes up before the board, you already have some historical data and one place to look back at, as opposed to trying to figure out what it said before.
I have a quick question.
Yes,
When
ma'am.
you do MOUs or contracts, do you guys have performance measures within the MOUs
Yes, ma'am.
and contracts?
Yes, ma'am. We have a standard MOU that everybody has to use on our template. And yes, we do it depending upon the area of the department that it's under. Food service might be one, academics may be something different. So yes, we do.
I guess since you're asking us, maybe, how are they performing against those
Yes.
contractual expectations?
And again, that's not a problem at all. It's just that in the past, when we had the previous board looked at the annual performance report memorandum of understanding and created this document. And so I didn't want to get away too far from the document based upon what was provided before. We would still do this. It's just that you would have a one-stop place to look at everything. So my team will look to try to provide what we think, and then you could give us some feedback to make any kind of adjustments. Madam President, I'm sorry, Ms. Jones.
Yes, sir. So is there, as it relates to our MOUs, a certain amount of MBEs that we consider when doing those? And if so, is there a checkbox for it, or a certain amount of points an application or understanding might have if they are minority-owned business?
Yeah, that's a scoring document whenever we review any kind of contract, not so much for MOUs,
Okay,
but for any kind of contract, we have an MBE, or I want to say a requirement or a process to give extra points so that, yes, the bottom line is, yes, we do look at the MWBE
yes.
to determine if that person has that and they get additional points for that when we score the contracts.
Okay, so contract side, but not for the
Not
MOU
not for
side.
MOUs, no ma'am.
Okay, all
Not
right.
for MOUs.
Thank you, Dr. Adams.
You're welcome. Thank you, Madam President. That's all I have.
So this would normally be our public comment portion, so I will read you as it has been noticed up. The Board of Education is committed to receiving public comments during COVID-19 pandemic and the corresponding suspension of in-person public Board of Education meetings. As part of this effort, the board is inviting interested members of the public to submit written comments to the email address slpsinfo@slps.org prior to the start of the board meeting. Subject to the requirements that commenters exercise proper decorum and respect for individual student or employee privacy, the Board of Education will assemble the written comments and make them available for review by the public via a link that will be placed on the district website alongside the link for viewing rebroadcasts of this board meeting. This procedure for submitting public comments will remain in effect until Board of Education returns to the normal in-person public meeting format. With that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda for September 8th, 2020.
Second.
Can you do them?
Hold on. Numbers 090820-01 through, 09-08-20-08.
And I heard Ms. Fowler seconded. So any questions or discussion on these items? Ms. Bell?
Ms. Fowler?
Approve?
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Vowell?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Board member reports. I'll just start down at the end. Susan?
Yes, give me one moment here. I am giving a CPN update. Give me 1 second here, please. All right, so right now, the CPN staff, which is open to anyone who's interested, has been working over the summer to do extra professional development in the areas of science and reading through a program called Ed Plus. This has been really helpful for those participating in knowing how to best adjust the reading curriculum to be used via virtual teaching. And then also Merrimack and Ashland teams have been working diligently to get each family what they need for technology and also to get them logged into classes and to help meet any needs they have during the pandemic. So basically along the lines of just ensuring that, we are making decisions to make sure that everyone's getting what they need right now in general. So nothing major at this time.
Joyce? Dr. Roberts, you just turned your microphone off.
Oh, thank you. Susan, I have a quick question.
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
the CPN schools curriculum online or outlined pretty much like the district's curriculum?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and it's under, where would I find it?
I don't know the exact
You can just
link
send
for that,
me-
but I can give it to you in an email. We
Yeah,
can talk further
please,
about it.
Please.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I'd like to begin by recognizing Yateman Liddell Middle School. They had an exceptional back-to-school parking lot event. It was in collaboration with a plethora of community partners. And so Principal Griffin, who's new to Yateman this year, I had an opportunity to meet him, along with Ms. Hooks and Dr. Nash, who helped to coordinate the event. I'd also like to highlight Dunbar Back to School virtual parent meeting. And I had an opportunity to tour a virtual classroom, which was really exciting. I understand fully that the district is committed to reading, reading continues to be the focus. And so I'd like to share that I took a reading field trip to the field house As many of you know, the Attorney Field was the attorney for Dred Scott, but it was quite impressive. And I'm hoping that perhaps we'll have an opportunity to collaborate with Julius Anthony and the Black authors, because all of the books there look like the children that we service. And I'd like to close with the Council of Grace City Schools. They put forth, they were able to obtain a summary judgment in DC, which we benefit from, because we now, the food program is the same as it was this summer. We don't have to bring the kids in and count them individually. And so again, I'm very pleased that we are part of that great organization. Thank you.
So I just have a quick update on the governance committee, which was, as President Rhodey Collins mentioned, formed in June. This committee's purpose, again, is to continually analyze our governance standards and conduct new member orientations. We will be setting a meeting time this evening for anyone who is interested in participating. So I invite anyone who wants to be a member of that committee to let President Rhodey Collins know, especially if you're a newer member and you have ideas of how things could be different or feel like your voice needs to be included. So that would be, I guess, Mr. Lane and Ms. Fowler, not to single you out, but if you have input, I would really want to welcome you. And that is pretty much it.
I'd love to join. Regina Fowler.
Thank you. Adam.
Yep, just praise and gratitude. One, just congratulations again to President Rhodey Collins and Dr. Roberts on your accomplishments as board members, and then just thanks and gratitude to all the district employees, all our teachers, families, students, in beginning this challenging virtual school year, and superintendent, of course.
Regina.
Nothing.
Donna.
Yes, I'd like to make an announcement. I'd like to congratulate Ms. Susan Kane. She has accepted the offer to become the next executive director of the public school retirement system of the city of St. Louis. Ms. Kane will start on Wednesday, September the 23rd, 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the staff, teachers, everyone working at the schools and in central office for the overtime that I'm sure you're putting in to make sure this school year has gotten off to a great start. We as a board really appreciate you and all of the work that you're putting in. And also thank you to all the parents out there who are working overtime to make this happen. That is not going unnoticed either. So we do appreciate everyone who has really come forward to make this a great school year. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second, Ms. Pelt.
Ms. Fowler,
Approve.
Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes?
Ms. Vowell,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Rhodey Collins.
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned.